I think of you whenever the north pasture turns gold, because it is the only place wide enough to hold what I cannot yet say aloud. Vivian Crowe stood at the head of Aunt Margaret's supper table with an opened letter lifted between two fingers. Lamplight touched the cream paper. 8 guests watched her as though she had begun a parlor game. Eliza Rowan stopped in the doorway with a basket of clean napkins against her broad waist. She knew the hand before she saw the signature. She knew the shallow slant of the capital I, the firm cross on every T. Caleb Mercer had written that line to her 3 weeks earlier. Vivian looked up and smiled. There she is. I thought everyone deserved to hear what sort of dreams Eliza has been writing to herself. The first laugh came from Mr. Bell, the miller's son. Another followed, nervous and thin. Aunt Margaret's face lost its color. Eliza set down the basket. Her full arms felt cold beneath the sleeves of her plum dress. "Give me the letter." Vivian drew it closer to her bodice. "Surely you don't expect us to believe these came from him?" A chair scraped near the open front door. Caleb Mercer stepped out of the shadowed hall. He had come to return Margaret's account book and had heard enough to understand the cruelty, if not yet all of it. Dust silvered the shoulders of his charcoal coat. He crossed the room without haste. Every word was mine. The laughter ended. Vivian's fingers tightened on the page. Caleb took the letter from her hand, careful enough that the paper did not tear. Then he turned toward Eliza and held it out. "And she never wrote one word I did not ask to receive." Eliza looked at the letter. She looked at Caleb. Every face in the room had changed, but the room was still watching. Her private hopes had become a spectacle, and now his defense had become the second act. She did not take the page. "You told them the truth," she said. "That does not make this kind." Caleb's hand lowered an inch. "Eliza," Aunt Margaret whispered. Eliza met Caleb's steady brown eyes. "I do not need another man to rescue me from being laughed at." She turned, took her coat from the peg, and walked into the cold Wyoming night without waiting to see who followed. No one did. That was the first mercy of the evening. Iron Creek woke beneath a pale October sky. By 7 the next morning, Eliza had opened Rowan Mercantile, swept the front step, checked the flour weights, and sorted the mail brought in from the stage station. She placed ranch orders in one stack, personal letters in another, and the harvest supper replies beside the cash book. Her work usually quieted her. Each envelope had a destination, each order had a number, each promise could be dated, copied, and answered. The empty space in her private drawer had no such order. 4 of Caleb's letters were missing. Eliza closed the drawer and turned the key. Vivian had known where Margaret kept the spare. That fact hurt less than the memory of her cousin reading the first line with such pleasure. At 8, the bell above the door rang. Caleb entered carrying a small pine box. He removed his hat. In the clean morning light, he looked more tired than heroic, which Eliza trusted more. "Margaret said you would be here." Margaret says many things when she hopes to arrange an outcome. He accepted that without defense. "May I set this down?" Eliza nodded toward the counter. He placed the box between them and stepped back. It was plain, built from smooth scrap pine, with no ribbon and no metal lock. A narrow leather cord held the lid closed. "Those are yours," he said. Eliza untied the cord. Inside lay every letter she had sent him since May, arranged by date. The corners were worn from handling, but clean. None had been folded carelessly. None was missing. Caleb watched her count them. "Did you say it because it was true?" she asked. "Or because you could not bear to watch them laugh?" He rested both hands on the crown of his hat. "Both can be true. Only one began months ago." She waited. I meant every word before Vivian touched a page. I meant them while no one knew. I will mean them if every man in the Cattle Association calls me a fool. Eliza closed the box. You knew I feared being pitied. I did. And you made my private life public? His jaw shifted. I answered a lie in a room where it was told. I should have asked what you needed after that. I did not. The absence of an excuse made it harder to keep her anger clean. You do not owe me an answer today, he said, or tomorrow. He left the box and walked out. Eliza stood with both palms on the counter until the bell stopped trembling. By noon, Iron Creek had built 3 versions of the supper. In the first, Eliza had invented a courtship. In the second, Caleb had lied to spare her. In the third, Vivian had exposed an improper attachment that respectable people should discourage. Each version arrived at Rowan Mercantile disguised as concern. Mrs. Pritchard bought lamp oil and asked whether Eliza was feeling fragile. Mr. Bell collected his flour and said Caleb had always been soft-hearted. A ranch wife lowered her voice and suggested that women of sense should not put foolish hopes on paper. Eliza entered each purchase correctly and gave each customer exact change. At 2, Aunt Margaret came from the storeroom and shut the connecting door. Vivian was cruel, she began. Yes, but if you let this become a feud, the whole town will talk. Eliza put down her pen. They are already talking. Only I am expected to be quiet. Margaret twisted the edge of her apron. I am asking you to keep the peace. Peace for whom? Her aunt had no answer ready. Eliza had spent 9 years making Rowan Mercantile look effortless. She answered supplier letters, settled disputed invoices, extended credit when cattle prices fell, and remembered which homesteads needed seed before spring. Margaret loved her. Eliza did not doubt that. Yet love that always asked the injured person to become smaller could feel painfully close to convenience. Vivian will apologize, Margaret said at last. When? When she is calmer. Eliza reopened the cash book. Then ask her to be calm before you ask me to be silent. Across town, Caleb faced a quieter form of pressure. The Iron Creek Cattle Association met in a whitewashed room above the feed warehouse. Caleb had been promised management of the spring herd if the owners approved his terms. It would mean a share of the profit and enough security to lease the north field adjoining the Mercer ranch. Harlan Price, who chaired the meeting, folded his spectacles over the contract. You have good cattle, Mercer. You also have poor timing. Caleb said nothing. The Rowan matter is becoming entertainment. Price of making it go away would be small. Say you spoke from gallantry. Say the woman misunderstood. Caleb looked through the high window toward the mercantile roof. Judge my cattle, he said, not the woman I write to. Price sighed. That answer may cost you the herd. Then it was never mine on honest terms. Caleb left without the contract. He did not go to the mercantile to tell Eliza what he had risked. He rode back to the ranch and spent the remaining daylight resetting a broken gatepost. Eliza learned of the meeting from the feed clerk, who delivered an invoice near closing. That restraint mattered more than a grand declaration would have. Caleb had paid a price without presenting the bill to her. The next morning, Eliza found a 5th item beneath the letters in the pine box. It was an envelope in Caleb's hand, unsealed and unaddressed. She could have returned it unread. Instead, she opened the single folded page because her name stood on the first line. He had written it 6 days before the supper. Eliza, I have been trying to ask a question without making it smaller by putting it on paper. The north field has a rise above the cottonwoods. If you wished, come spring, I would like you to walk it with me and tell me where a house ought to face. I have spent years deciding alone. I no longer think that is a virtue." Eliza sat behind the counter. The letter did not ask her to abandon the store. It did not offer rescue from the Rowan house. It asked for her judgment in the shape of a future he had imagined before anyone laughed. She read the last line again. "I would rather ask you with the wind in the grass than hide behind another stamp." For the first time since the supper, Eliza let herself cry. The tears were quiet and brief. She folded the page along its original crease, then placed it back in the box. She still did not answer. The harvest supper was 4 days away. Half the town depended on Rowan Mercantile for the event. Flour from Cheyenne, apples from a farm along the Laramie Road, lamp chimneys from Rawlins, coffee, sugar, paper lanterns, and the rented plates for families who owned too few. Eliza had arranged it all through 6 weeks of correspondence. On Wednesday afternoon, the stage agent brought bad news. The apple wagon from the Laramie Road had broken an axle 30 miles east, and the fruit would not reach Iron Creek before Saturday night. 3 committee women gathered around the mercantile counter. One proposed cutting the widow's coal fund to buy preserved peaches from Cheyenne. Another suggested canceling the supper dessert and blaming the teamster. Eliza unfolded the stage agent's note and read it twice. Then she opened her copybook to a letter received in August from Mrs. Talbot, who kept a small orchard beside Willow Creek. The widow had asked whether Rowan Mercantile could find buyers for 24 late-bearing trees whose fruit would not store through winter. "We do not need peaches from Cheyenne," Eliza said. "Mrs. Talbot has apples 12 miles north. If we pay her the amount already promised to the Laramie grower and send a wagon before dawn, the supper keeps its fruit and a local widow gets cash before winter." Mrs. Pritchard frowned. "The north road is rutted. Then we use a ranch wagon with high wheels." The bell above the door rang. Caleb had entered in time to hear the last sentence. "Mercer Ranch has one," he said. Eliza looked at him. "What will you charge?" "Feed for the team and whatever you pay a driver." "That is less than the usual rate." "Then choose someone else." His expression remained calm. "I am offering a wagon, not charity. You found the apples." The distinction settled something inside her. Eliza calculated the driver's pay, the feed, and 12 miles of freight. The total came in $4 below the original order. She assigned $2 to Mrs. Talbot for packing, and 2 more to the coal fund. By sunrise Thursday, Caleb's wagon was on the north road with the miller's son driving and a written receipt in his pocket. When it returned that afternoon, Mrs. Talbot rode beside the crates. She stepped down, embraced Eliza, and said the payment would keep her youngest mare through winter. Caleb watched from the hitching rail while Eliza checked the fruit and signed the receipt. He did not praise her in front of the committee. He simply asked whether she wanted the crates in the storeroom or beneath the cool awning. "Storeroom," she said, "1 layer deep, and leave the door open until sundown." He followed her direction. The supper committee left relieved. Mrs. Talbot left paid. The coal fund had grown. Eliza had taken a failed delivery and turned it into 3 smaller promises kept. Caleb remained until the last crate was placed. "Is that what you do with every disaster?" he asked. "Only the ones polite enough to arrive in writing." He laughed, low and surprised. Eliza felt the sound before she allowed herself to enjoy it. On Thursday, 2 committee women came to the store and asked if Vivian might stand at the donation table instead of Eliza. They called it a way to prevent discomfort. "Whose discomfort?" Eliza asked. Neither woman answered directly. Aunt Margaret took Eliza aside after they left. "Let Vivian host. You can keep the accounts in the back room. Everyone knows you do the important work." Eliza glanced through the glass front at the pale main street. People trusted her hand on every order and every debt, but some preferred that hand remain unseen. "If my name is not fit for the room," she said, "my work is not fit for their table." Margaret stared at her. "What are you saying?" "After the supper, I am opening a correspondence desk at the hotel. Mrs. Fallon has offered me the corner beside the front windows. Ranchers can bring me orders, accounts, and letters. I will charge fairly, and my name will be on the work." "You would leave me over this?" "I am leaving the place you keep asking me to occupy." That choice frightened Eliza more than Vivian's laughter had. Rowan Mercantile gave her wages, a room, and a place known to everyone. An independent desk could fail before winter. She made the decision anyway. Margaret opened her mouth, then closed it. Vivian learned of the plan that evening. She came into Eliza's room without knocking. Her golden brown hair was pinned in fashionable curls, and her anger made her prettier in the sharp, bright way that had always won rooms quickly. "You are punishing Aunt Margaret because Caleb felt sorry for you." Eliza continued packing blank stationery into a wooden case. "You read a stolen letter to 8 people. I found it. In a locked drawer." Vivian's face tightened. "You made the whole family ridiculous, writing to a man like that as though he would build a life around you." Eliza looked up. "You believed he belonged with you." "Everyone did. He did not." The words landed harder than Eliza intended. Vivian turned toward the door, then stopped. "He will tire of defending you." "Perhaps." Eliza closed the stationery case. "But I will not tire of defending myself." Vivian left. On Friday afternoon, Caleb came to Rowan Mercantile with a folded invoice. He waited until Eliza finished helping a sheep farmer before approaching the counter. "I need to answer a buyer in Denver," he said. "He has offered terms that sound generous enough to make me suspicious." Eliza read the letter. The offer was not dishonest, but it required Caleb to guarantee losses for cattle he would not control after the rail yard. She showed him the clause and suggested a shorter reply that divided risk fairly. He listened without interruption. "Would you write it?" he asked. "For the usual fee." "I expected nothing less." She drafted the answer. Caleb watched her form the lines, but his attention never made her feel displayed. When she finished, he paid the fee and folded the copy into his coat. At the door he paused. "I heard about the hotel desk." Eliza stiffened. "The town is efficient." "Do you need shelves?" She almost smiled. "That is a dangerous question from a man who owns a saw." "I can ask a safer one." Outside, 2 women slowed their steps to look through the window. Caleb glanced toward them, then back to Eliza. "May I walk beside you to the hotel when you close?" He did not reach for her hand. He did not presume that his presence would repair what had happened. Eliza considered him for a long moment. "Beside me," she said, "not ahead of me." "I can manage that." They walked down the sunlit street shoulder to shoulder. People watched. Caleb did not perform for them. He asked where Mrs. Fallon planned to place the desk and whether the west window leaked. Eliza told him the floor tilted and the front corner needed a narrow shelf. They spoke of practical things until practical things began to feel tender. At the hotel porch, Caleb stopped. "Did you read the letter in the box?" "Yes." "You still do not owe me an answer." "I know." The corner of his mouth moved. "That may be the hardest part of this arrangement." Eliza smiled despite herself. "Waiting?" "Keeping quiet while I do it." For one breath, the town and its talk fell away. The reprieve ended the next morning when Eliza checked the packets she had prepared for the hotel desk. One personal letter was missing, noting, not Caleb's, but a draft Eliza had written and never sent. It was the most uncertain page she had ever put his name upon. Sometimes I wonder whether a woman like me has mistaken kindness for affection. She had written those words after Caleb spent an afternoon repairing Margaret's delivery wagon and stayed for coffee. She had never sent them because she disliked how the question asked him to measure her worth. Vivian had taken the page. Eliza found her cousin in the mercantile stockroom arranging ribbons for the harvest supper. "Give it back." Vivian did not pretend ignorance. "You accused me before the family. I have a right to answer." "With my words? With the truth. A sentence is not the truth when you cut away everything around it." Vivian tied a bow too tightly and snapped the ribbon. "Caleb made me a liar in front of everyone." "You made yourself one before he entered the room." Vivian's cheeks flushed. "Perhaps the town should decide." Eliza understood then that she would not recover the page by asking. She also understood where Vivian intended to use it. That evening, Eliza told Caleb. They stood near the loading platform behind the store, where the last harvest crates waited beneath canvas. "I can speak to Margaret," he said. "No." "To Vivian, then?" "No." He waited. "She took my words," Eliza said. "She does not get to take my answer, too." Caleb studied her face. "What do you need from me?" "Bring your letters tomorrow night, all of them." "Do you want me to read them?" "Only if I ask." "Then I will wait until you ask." The harvest supper filled the town hall on Saturday. Autumn sun poured through 6 tall windows and turned the cream walls almost white. Wheat sheaves stood in stone crocks. Long tables held pies, roasted squash, bread, coffee, and jars of late preserves. Eliza arrived in a teal wool bodice over an ivory blouse, carrying the final account book. Her broad, soft waist and full hips were not hidden beneath a shapeless apron. She had spent too many years letting other people decide when she should disappear. Vivian wore rose silk and stood at the donation table, accepting praise for the decorations. Caleb entered 10 minutes later in a clean, dark vest and gray shirt. He nodded to Eliza, but did not cross the room. The distance was intentional. This was her answer to give. Eliza completed the supper accounts, paid the teamster who had hauled the apples, and showed the committee exactly how much remained for the widow's coal fund. Even Mrs. Pritchard, who had called her fragile, thanked her for saving $12 by combining the freight orders. That was when Vivian struck her spoon against a water glass. Conversation thinned. "Before we finish," Vivian said, "there is a misunderstanding I must correct. My cousin has allowed Mr. Mercer to injure my reputation by pretending their attachment was mutual." Aunt Margaret rose halfway from her chair. "Vivian, this is neither the time nor the place." "It became the place when she made our family choose sides." Vivian unfolded Eliza's stolen draft. "Sometimes I wonder whether a woman like me has mistaken kindness for affection." The hall went still. Eliza felt the old instinct lower her eyes, gather her skirts, leave before pity could catch her at the door. She stayed. Vivian lowered the page. There. She admitted it herself. Eliza closed the account book. "Read the rest." Vivian's confidence flickered. "That is the important part." Eliza stepped away from the committee table. "You wanted everyone to hear my words? Let them hear all of them." "Eliza," Margaret murmured, "read the rest." Vivian looked around the room. The same audience she had once commanded now waited without smiling. She returned to the page. "If I have mistaken him, I will ask nothing of him. I will not turn kindness into a debt, and I will not make myself smaller to purchase affection. Whatever his answer, I mean to keep my work, my judgment, and my name." The last words trembled in Vivian's voice. Eliza faced the room. "I wrote that. I did not send it because I decided fear should not ask the question for me." Then she looked at Caleb. He waited. "Do you have your answer from that day?" she asked. Caleb took one folded letter from the inside pocket of his vest. He did not move closer. "I do. Please read the part you choose." He opened the page. "Kindness is what I give a stranger. What I feel for you has kept me awake for 3 months. I do not want gratitude from you, Eliza. I want the chance to be known well enough that you can choose me without owing me." No one laughed. Caleb folded the letter again. "I wrote that before the Rowan supper, before the cattle contract, before any person in this room knew I carried her name in my pocket." Harlan Price stood near the back wall. He looked down first. Vivian's face had gone pale. "You cannot prove when he wrote it." Eliza turned to the supper accounts. "No, Vivian, this is not a trial, and I will not turn my heart into evidence for your entertainment." She lifted the book she had completed. "What I can prove is that I ordered every sack of flour on these tables, reconciled every donation, and saved enough freight to buy coal for 3 households. You trusted my words when they carried your business. You questioned them only when they carried my hope." Several women lowered their eyes. Eliza looked back at Vivian. "You could have asked what those letters meant. You chose to make them entertainment." Vivian pressed the stolen page flat against the table. For once, admiration did not rush to meet her. Mrs. Pritchard stepped away. Mr. Bell stared at his plate. The silence was not violence, but it was consequence. Aunt Margaret came around the table. "I asked the wrong girl to keep the peace." Eliza's throat tightened. Margaret faced the room. "The correspondence desk at Rowan Mercantile will bear Eliza's name from Monday forward. If she is still willing to work beside me, she will hold a half interest in every account she manages." Eliza had not expected the offer. She also would not accept it merely because the room had turned in her favor. "We will put the terms in writing," she said. A small sound moved through the hall, half surprise and half approval. Margaret gave a tearful laugh. "Of course we will." Eliza looked toward Vivian. "Return every page you took. Then I will decide what peace between us can honestly look like." Vivian nodded once. She did not apologize, not yet. Eliza allowed the unfinishedness of that answer. Justice did not require a performance from either of them. The supper continued, though more quietly. Caleb remained near the back until Eliza finished the accounts and handed the coal money to the minister's wife. Only then did he approach. "You did not need me to rescue you," he said. "No. I am glad you asked me to answer." "So am I." They stepped outside beneath the cottonwoods. Porch lanterns warmed the boardwalk, while the last gold of evening held along the western ridge. Caleb took the unsealed letter from his coat, the one about the north field. "There was a question I meant to ask before any of them learned your name was in my pocket." Eliza looked at the page, then at him. "Ask it now. Will you come see the north field with me Sunday? Only if you let me choose where the house faces." His smile came slowly. "I was counting on it." The following afternoon they walked the rise above the cottonwoods. Wind bent the grass in long bronze waves. Caleb showed her where the spring water ran and where the snow drifted deepest. Eliza chose a place facing southeast, where morning light would reach a desk by the front window. She did not promise marriage that day. She promised to return the next Sunday. Caleb treated the promise as enough. By January, a painted board inside Rowan Mercantile read, "Eliza Rowan, Correspondence and Accounts." The words were small, but they belonged to her. Margaret kept their partnership agreement in the safe. Vivian returned every letter and began spending fewer evenings at the store. Her apology came in winter, awkward and incomplete. Eliza listened without pretending trust could be restored by one speech. Caleb lost the spring herd contract. The Denver buyer accepted Eliza's revised terms instead, allowing 3 smaller ranches to combine cattle under a fair guarantee. Caleb earned less authority and more independence. He seemed satisfied with the exchange. In April, carpenters raised the first wall of a house on the north field. Eliza kept her desk in town and planned a second one beside the southeast window. Caleb never asked her to choose between work and home. One evening, she placed the old pine box on the unfinished mantel. The leather cord had softened from use. "You truly kept every one?" she asked. Caleb stood beside her, sleeves rolled over his working forearms, his shirt buttoned against the spring chill. He opened the box. Her letters lay beside his, arranged by date in Eliza's careful hand. Every word. This time, when he offered her the latest letter, Eliza took it.